Gals, collectors, and welcome to another Bossk Bounty video. Welcome to episode 182 of Ask Boss Bounty. This is the weekly Q&A series that drops every Sunday where I answer your questions. So if you do have a question for next week's episode and you want to be featured in the video, please be sure to leave that question in the comment section below, and hopefully I'll get round to answering your question. If you do happen to enjoy the video, hit the like button down below, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and before we do get onto this week's questions, I just want to say a huge thank you to Blowtorch Scorch, who is my latest member of the channel. Thank you so much for signing up. I really do appreciate the extra support. And with all that being said, let's get on to the first question of the week. Resistance X-Wing Pilot says, hey boss, question for next week. With the new Ahsoka trailer out now, what do you think of the new astromech droid with the Kenner R2 inspired dome? Hope to see it in TVC or more likely a Disney Parks multi-pack. I thought it was absolutely awesome. Really nice nod to the original Kenner R2D2, as you said, with those little triangles on the dome there. I will try and throw an image up on the screen now so everyone can see it if you haven't seen the trailer already. I'm really looking forward to Ahsoka, and I love it when they do things like this, when they do the nod back to the toys. I just think it's great, and obviously for people like myself and collectors out there that have been collecting this stuff a long time, they obviously see it. And yeah, hopefully that will come out in the vintage collection or Disney Parks. All depends on how much of a role it'll have in the show, of course, but yeah, that'll be a good one for sure. B Davis 24 fan says, hello Tim, hope you're doing well. My question for this week is, could Hasbro reuse both the amazing Tamura Morrison head sculpt and now the definitive officer sculpt to give us a clone officer that we see in both the Clone Wars and the 2017 Battlefront 2? It would be an easy reuse without much new tooling, if any. Ben. Well, I thought I'd just have a quick look at the clone officer again, just to sort of, you know, to re-familiarise myself with what they look like. And yeah, to me it looks like they've got a slightly different torso, so I think if you wanted that one to be accurate to the source material, then there would be maybe sort of like a whole torso retool, which potentially they might not do. But you never know. As you say, we've got the head and the legs and everything would be fine, so maybe they could retool the body to include that ever so slightly different tunic. But yeah, I think they would need to do that, because if you were to use the officer that we've got already from the sort of live action films and what have you, I think people would sort of moan that that isn't accurate to the Clone Wars officer. Magic Book of Horror says, question for next week. Whenever Hasbro decides to show us the vintage collection Director Krennic, do you think Hasbro could give him a soft goods cape instead of the plastic cape that you get with the 6-inch Black Series version of the character? Because I think Hasbro missed the opportunity to use a soft goods cape instead of the plastic cape in the Black Series line. What do you think? Well, I am a big advocate for soft goods in general, but especially with capes and robes and things like that. And you'll see the two differences here. We've got the original one here, which came out on that single card back, and then we have the Moff Gideon here from the rescue set, which came with the soft goods cape. Now, some people prefer the plastic capes because they drape better and they've got those sort of sculptings in there to make them look like their material. We'll just turn that one around so you can see them there. But I personally prefer the soft goods cape, and I think with Director Krennic it'll be interesting to see what they do, because I don't think that they could do it like this, because Director Krennic's cape actually has like a collar which comes up over the sort of neckline, which be interesting to see how they do it. I think the easiest way for them to do it will probably be with the plastic, you know, attach it to his back just like they have done with Moff Gideon there, but then obviously it'll just have that collar as well. But yeah, interesting to see what they do. Me personally, I would prefer soft goods, but I know that isn't an opinion that everybody shares. Owen Brown says, great episode Tim, question for next week. Do you think we'll eventually see another Stormtrooper 4 pack but with the definitive version VC231? I'd love to army build it, but buying lots of carded ones will be really expensive, as they are at least double the retail value on the secondary market. Yeah, I feel your pain for that one. Obviously, you know, the 4 pack that originally came out, that was been and gone. They have never sort of restocked that as far as I'm aware. There seems to be lots of the other 4 packs around. They seem to have stocked those quite nicely, which is a bit strange really, considering the Stormtrooper is the one really I think that everyone would want to buy multiples of. However, since we've got that new Stormtrooper with the rocker ankles and, you know, the definitive holster and all that kind of thing, I'm with you. I would love for them to do another 4 pack. Whether they will or not, I don't know. What I can say is that I think that that Stormtrooper will be the Stormtrooper, the definitive Stormtrooper for the next, what, 10 years at least, I would say. So I don't think they're probably finished with him just yet. I'm pretty sure that you'll get him in some way. They're not just going to waste that Stormtrooper sculpt. We'll see him again, no doubt. James Ringland 6141 says, hi Tim, thanks for another great episode. You've actually coaxed me back into 3.75 inch world of collecting after years of mainly collecting the Black Series. Question for next week: do you think Hasbro will use the first film's 50th anniversary in 2027 to give us the things we're pining for, like the Death Star or the Cantina playsets, or versions of the main characters? Well, first of all, I hope we don't have to wait until 2027 for versions of the main characters. That would be really, really disappointing. I think there's been enough sort of noise in the community to suggest that we want those pretty soon, right? That's what I think anyway. In terms of the anniversary, I think if the vintage collection is still going in 2027, then for sure we will see lots of stuff for the anniversary. I can't see them sort of bypassing the 50th anniversary of Star Wars without bringing lots of stuff out. I mean, they've done pretty well with the Return of the Jedi this year, but of course the 50th anniversary of Star Wars, the film that started it all, I could see them doing quite a lot of stuff for that if the vintage collection is still around. But we'll have to wait and see, man. It'll be interesting to see. Hopefully the TVC is still around by then. Grange Wallace says, g'day Bossk, how long do you think we'll have to wait, wave-wise, for Hasbro to complete the Bad Batch crew in the TVC? Just got Hunter and he is an amazing figure. He is a really good figure, and unfortunately I think this is one of those ones that we may be waiting quite a long time. In terms of wave-wise, I mean, they could complete it next year by bringing out one in each wave, but I personally don't think they're going to do that. You never know. I think the Crosshair figure was rumoured for this year, but you know, what's happened to that? We still haven't seen that. Maybe it will get revealed at SDCC as a figure, or maybe a pipeline. But yeah, man, I just think the Bad Batch in TVC, I don't think it's going to be something that we're just going to be given all at once. We're going to have to wait for that, unfortunately. Scruffy Looking 80 says, do you like all Star Wars content, films and TV series, etc., as your collecting covers a wide variety? Or is that just the love of collecting regardless? Well, I think when it comes to the vintage collection, obviously I collect that, so I like to try and get everything that the vintage collection offers. I also run a channel that does review it all, so I kind of feel it's my duty to make sure I review everything that's in the vintage collection. And also, from a personal point of view of my channel, it's nice to have like that sort of catalogue of all the TVC that I've reviewed over the years. But in terms of Star Wars content, yes, I do like most of it. I love a lot of it. I like most of it. There is some of it that I'm not overly keen on. However, if they were still to bring a figure out from The Last Jedi, for example, in the vintage collection, then I would still buy it. From a review point of view, it would certainly not be my favourite character or my favourite figure, but I can still appreciate, you know, a decent sculpt and decent paint apps and things like that, whether I like the character or not. So that's kind of my view on it. But yes, in terms of Star Wars content, I don't like all of it that Disney are putting out, for sure. You know, I have Andor on a very, very high pedestal in terms of what I think Star Wars content, you know, in terms of the quality of it should be like. And then you've got other things that I'm not too keen on, like the sequel trilogy, for example. Darth Xander says, hi Boss, question for you. With the release of the Mando N1, do you think they'd retool it for a proper N1 starfighter from episode 1? I wanted the one from 2012, the movie Heroes line, but it's not too impossible to find. Thanks for the content as always. Well, I think if they are going to do that, then it will be next year, if they will do it, because I think it's the 25th anniversary of The Phantom Menace. Correct me if I'm wrong, it was released in 1999, so that would make it 25 years next year. So if they're going to do it, it will be next year, but you would think that it'd be quite an easy one for them to do, don't you? So who knows, man. And as far as vehicles go from The Phantom Menace, that is definitely one of the ones that I would like in my collection as well. So hopefully, man, hopefully they'll do it. Quadzilla1111 says, hello, question for next week. What do you think about the idea of having mini HasLabs for the smaller things we want but Hasbro won't release? For example, a Blurg, Scorpion, Annihilator Droid, Mudhorn, etc. Lower price and therefore more accessible to fans. Thoughts? I've got to say, buddy, I'm not 100% a fan of that idea. I think Hasbro themselves need to take a risk once in a while with these things. They can't expect the fans to sort of, you know, fund them every time for these big dream items. And even, you know, I would go as far as saying figure packs. If it was like maybe 8 or 12 figures that we are just never going to get, that we really desperately want, then I would back that. But I think when it comes to the smaller things like beasts and things like that, as I said, I think Hasbro need to take a risk and, you know, start pumping out this stuff. And if it doesn't sell, it doesn't sell. You know, they'll win on something else. So That's the way I feel about it anyway. I wouldn't want the sort of whole vintage collection line to become like a crowd-funded thing. It would not be a good thing in my opinion. Stephen Powell 7714 says, firstly, much love to the content, first class as always, thank you buddy. Says secondly, I'd like to say a good call in the My Toy Box app. The barcode scan is particularly a good feature, which brings me to my question. So having gone through my collection to catalogue on the app, I've discovered the glue on some of the blisters I have started to come undone. Is there something that could be done to prevent this, and what would you or do you use to reattach? Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I personally don't reattach at the moment. I think all the ones that have fallen off for me, which tend to be sort of like figures from Rogue One, like the Death Trooper, Chirrut Imwe. There's been a couple of others that have done it as well. I think some of the solo figures like the Mimbam Stormtrooper, that one's a culprit as well. And they tend to fall off. Obviously that's a problem with the glue that they've used and that it's just not good enough. I think glue can dry over time, especially if you're in a collection room that maybe the temperature goes from warm to cold quite often. You know, summer, winter, which is why a lot of people sort of like regulate the heat in their collection rooms, which is definitely something I'm going to be doing in my new collection room. I'm going to have an air conditioner in there that's going to sort of keep it at the same temperature throughout. That's the only thing I can really suggest really. I think in terms of reattaching, it's not really something I do. I think that sort of raises problems with, like, you know, selling it at a later date, one day or whatever. Yeah, it just makes it difficult. Spartan Operator Productions 2911 says, question for next week. If Hasbro were to make a brand new clone and you could choose the decals that go on it, what Legion would you make the clone be? P.S. I love your videos. Keep up the great work. Thank you, buddy. Well, I've got these guys here, the 327th, I think they're called. I would love Hasbro to bring out a sort of 4-pack or even a carded figure of this using that new clone sculpt that we have. I mean, I could say the 501st, which is my favourite, but that's just going to be too obvious. And also I think that Hasbro will just do the 501st. I think that's just an obvious one for them to do. These ones maybe not so much. So I'm sort of getting behind these. I would love to see you know, maybe a 4-pack, as I say, or just a single carded. And then of course Commander Bly as well. We need Commander Bly, just like the Black Series have got. That would be awesome in TVC. Purple Music said, it's been a while, thanks for everything you do. Question for next week, with all the new media and rumoured HasLab, do you think Hasbro has dropped the ball on finishing the 96? This appeared to be a priority for them, but it appears not so much. Once the final wave this year is announced, how many have been released and how many are still required? AKA Purple Yoda. Hello buddy. Right, to answer your question, I did do a series, maybe I think I started it about 2 years ago, called Finish the 96. And in that video I go through basically which figures are missing from the original 96 that still need to be done in the vintage collection. It was like a 6-part series. I will leave a link to the playlist just up there and also in the description below. And then I think I did an update video about 9 or 10 months ago, I think it was now, after we had quite a few of them released last year. There was like all those sort of Walmart exclusives and things like that. However, this year has been pretty disappointing in my opinion for the 96. I think the only ones that we've got are the Scout Trooper and Squidhead that's going to be coming in that 4-pack. You know, let me know in the comments down below if I've forgotten one, but you know, all of the other Return of the Jedi stuff have either been ones that we've already got, like repacks, reissues, or figures that aren't in the 96, but they're still awesome. I mean, the Darth Vader is an awesome figure, but he's not a 96 figure. And also for the 96, would it have killed them this year to give us some of the Ewoks? There's like 3 Ewoks that we still need from the 96. We need Chief Chirper, Warwick and Romba. We could have got those in the 40th anniversary, but no, we don't really seem to have too much going on in terms of the 96 for the 40th anniversary, just the Scout Trooper and Squidhead obviously coming out. But they could have done so much more in my opinion, and for that reason, you know, it is disappointing. In that Finish the 96 series, I do sort of go through the figures that are needed and what the current best version is. So when I talk about Squidhead, I look at the Power of the Jedi version and so on. And you know, the update video has basically said, you know, now they've done this one, so now we can say that they've ticked this one off. And I can't really remember how many there were left for them to do, but I think it was over 30 of the 96 they still need to do. But yeah, go back and watch that video, and if they release any more this year or next year, then I'll obviously do an update to that video, and hopefully we can tick some more of them off. Montiello says, question for next week, what is the likelihood of getting action figures of the random bad guys from shows like The Bad Batch and Obi-Wan Kenobi? The alligator man shooting at Obi-Wan on the rooftop sticks out for me. Yep, he looks great. Chances of getting him are, I would say, virtually zero, unfortunately. As I've said on a few occasions, they are kind of struggling to even get the main characters out from these shows, let alone the cool background aliens, which is things that we want. So yeah, unfortunately, sorry to be a bearer of bad news, but you know, very unlikely in my opinion. Mr. AJ Man 12 says, hi boss, question for next week. With all the talk of Rebels figures potentially coming out with the rumoured Ghost HasLab, do you think we are likely to receive a full wave of Rebel figures, or will they be drip fed to us like they did with the ARC Troopers, and looks like they are going to be doing with the Bad Batch? So I think I sort of talked about this on the live stream with the SWTVC guys a couple of weeks ago now. And in my opinion, I think if they're going to be releasing this Ghost in the HasLab, then they have to give us all of the characters, whether that be as the base offering or stretch goals or whatever. You're going to want that crew with that ship. What they do with those sculpts afterwards, whether they bring out sort of, you know, different versions from different seasons, different haircuts, that kind of thing in future, who knows? But I don't think we're ever going to get like a wave of Rebels figures in the vintage collection. I think if you want the Rebels crew, I think it'll probably turn out that you've got to buy the Ghost to get them, at least in the short term anyway. But I could be proven wrong. We're going to find out at SDCC at the end of this week. Aquilish Doug says, great episode, question for next week. With SDC panel looming, we have a good idea of what could be shown based on previous pipelines and the confirmed HasLab announcement. I always look forward to the pipeline segment, but I doubt they will pipeline anything related to the Ahsoka series if they are planning a weekly reveal campaign. As most of what they will show is likely to reflect new media, do you think next week's pipelines could offer something from the original trilogy or the prequel trilogy related? And if they announced a Trooper 4-pack, what would I hope for? So yeah, thanks for the question, buddy. And in terms of the Trooper packs, definitely I would still want them to bring out a Rebel Commando Endor 4-pack. I just think that's needed, especially with all the other stuff that we've got from Endor in the 40th anniversary this year. An Ewok 4-pack would have been nice as well. There's a potential that they could do an Officers 4-pack, isn't there? Because we've got Piet now. How that would work out and who they would put in that pack, you know, I don't know, but it would be awesome if they did it. In terms of what they would do for pipelines, you're right, there isn't too much else to come out, is there, this year now that we don't already know about, because everything's either been pipelined or it's going to be from, you know, Ahsoka basically. I do hope we do actually see Ahsoka herself actually as a figure. That would be a good reveal, even though they probably will be doing those weekly things while the Ahsoka show is on, those weekly reveals. But at least show us Ahsoka, because we've seen her in the trailer, haven't we? It's not going to hurt them to do that, in my opinion. There's no spoilers involved or anything. But in terms of the pipelines that they could do for that, I think if they're going to be doing pipelines, they may need to stretch into 2024. And that would be interesting to see what's on the cards for that. Hopefully, with it being the 25th anniversary of the Phantom Menace, you know, maybe we could see some of that. I don't know. That would be pretty cool. OT, I think we'd all take more OT, wouldn't we? So let's keep our fingers crossed for lots of reveals at SDCC and lots of pipelines as well. That would be awesome. Alright then guys, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for watching, and if you do have a question for next week's episode and you want to be featured in the video, please leave that question in the comment section below, as I mentioned before. I want to thank you all for watching. Thank you to my Patreon supporters and channel members. Your support means a great deal to me as always. And don't forget everybody, it is San Diego Comic Con at the end of this week. I think it's Friday the 21st. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section below. I think that is when the Hasbro panel is. So let's keep our fingers crossed for lots of TVC reveals and pipelines. Thanks for watching guys, and we shall see you on the next one.